Hello and welcome everyone to the first Masterclass episode of the My GBC Podcast. Over the course of this past season, we actually did something new. We asked a number of our guests for their insights on how to practice good study habits, excel in coursework, and make the most of your student experience. So we had a lot of insightful conversations and received a lot of empowering advice from our guests. And today, me and our producer, Claire, are here to play some of those clips and tips that we recorded and discuss how you can probably apply them throughout your semester. So we have tips from navigating time management to building confidence and asking questions. And this episode hopefully is going to be your compass to understanding and enhancing your study strategies. So join us as we're going to unlock the secrets of academic success and flourishing in your classes this semester. Okay, so hi Claire, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well as well. I'm pretty excited to see what we have to talk about. We listened to these clips briefly, Claire, before, but we're going to listen to them again and see what we have to say.
Indeed. Yeah. I didn't want to listen to them too thoroughly because I wanted to keep them kind of fresh for when we talk about them. But yeah, it's really exciting that we did this. I'm really glad that we did because we asked the same question to each of the guests, just asked like, what would be your tips for good study strategies for students at George Brown? And it's interesting getting all kinds of different answers because you have all kinds of different people coming in. And it also maybe depends on like what's the mood of the conversation that we were having at the time or the subject matter or what type of student they are. Like we had a brand design student, but we also had a dance student. So the answers about what you do for your study strategies are really vast, but I think that they can all be applied in some way to everyone. And I think that those varied perspectives are also really helpful so that you're not always kind of using all the same strategies, all the same tools all the time, but you can kind of get like a broader perspective from people in different programs. So the first strategy that I'll play for you here is from Abisola Asha from the Black Student Success Network. And she had sort of like a confidence building suggestion, I would say. So I'll play it for you here.
I would say as a student, I think it's always best to reach out if you're unclear about something. We don't always have the answers. And, many times students do face imposter syndrome. Like if I ask for an answer, am I just not qualified enough? Do I not deserve to be here? So one thing I always tell my students, for example, is reach out. Nothing hurts in asking a question multiple times because there could be different answers to it. So in order for you to succeed in school, I always encourage students to always reach out for support wherever they can. And then if one person isn't able to help you, they can always redirect you to the right resources.
Okay, so what did you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very important tip. And I look at it from I guess two ways. One is that, yeah, of course, people are not going to know what you need, like your professor or the staff, anyone who is able to help you in the school. So unless you advocate for yourself and you ask for help, they're not going to know. But the other way that I look at it is if you look at this from a professor's point of view in a class kind of setting, they will get to know you more the more you ask questions about whether like the course, whatever they're teaching, or just like questions that you have about the industry, maybe. They will get to know you more. Like if you are one of those students that you're like always sitting quietly in the back of the class and the professor doesn't really know you, especially like in classes that are a bit bigger with more students, it's very not likely that the professor would be willing to like give you a reference letter when you're looking for a job or like refer you to someone maybe for an internship or something. But when they know you, they obviously think, oh, okay, this person is interested enough to ask questions, or if they don't understand something, they will ask to learn more. So like that shows your passion about the learning as well. And they just generally get to know you. So yeah, I think it's very important to look at this from both perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for myself in just life, like not even school, but in general, when I'm in groups of people, I might be scared to put up my hand and ask a question because I assume that it's a stupid question, but
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing that's like, no stupid questions. And you also never know if there's somebody else in the room who also has that question in their mind and just hasn't felt sure enough to ask yet. So if you're unclear about something, you can just ask and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask, then you're not going to know.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm not saying that, oh, I'm always gonna be confident sitting in like the front of class asking all the questions and getting the teacher's attention. Like honestly, it's very stressful sometimes, especially if you're in a bigger class and you don't know the other students or just whatever, if it's a conference or something. But it's I figure it's the first time that it's really hard. And as soon as you get
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone for the first time and you ask that question, it really becomes very easy that
Yeah.
like after a while you're just gonna be like, why was I even scared about this?
Yeah, and there's a fear to even if it's not in a group asking the question, but just going
Hmm.
up to a professor and asking, I think maybe there's a fear of like, what is that professor going to think of me?
Yeah.
So it's important to just kind of remember, oh yeah, I'm literally a student in school. This is the point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I promise you no one's gonna think that like you're stupid or anything.
Uh,
Professors, I sometimes like put myself in that person's shoes. I'm like, would I have remembered that a student asked? I'm like, literally no, impossible that professor is gonna remember that. And like to be honest, like how stupid can a question be for a
yeah,
professor to think, oh, it's stupid? They're just teaching a new concept, so it's very normal for you to have questions about it. So
yeah,
yeah, I think I'm gonna be fine. Just try it for the first time and you're gonna be okay.
yeah. Break the ice, ask questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so our next piece of advice, the clip is a little bit longer, but why don't you introduce it? Because I think you led this interview.
Yeah, okay. So we had this conversation with my friend and my classmate from my program, actually, brand design program with Nina Hidaka. So let's hear what she had to say.
Improve my grades. Okay. I think as a designer, what is really important is time management. So there's so many tasks and so many assignments coming in every week. And since I'm a perfectionist, if I could do the one project, I can spend like all day, all time, but like it's not going to work like that in the real world. You have to
Yeah,
manage your time and then you have to organize your schedule. Also, like you can't just like work 24 hours. You have your family time. You sometimes go out to get your groceries. You have your life too, but you
yeah,
have to achieve all of the goals and assignments that you have. So, what I really learned is about how to manage my time. And to do that, I recommend using the Google Calendar. It helped me a lot, tremendously.
yeah.
So, first of all, it's like free items that everybody has it if you're using the laptop. And you just write your task. You can have a reminder settings. And you just organized and see first in the morning and before you go to sleep, and then manage what they have for next day and then think about it what I have to do and calculate your time so that you don't have to rush at the end. Like before, probably the first semester or the first year, I was like doing my assignment at the end of the moment, like which we didn't do because if you're a perfectionist and if you want to do the good design, you can't just leave it in the last minute, right?
Yeah.
But I used to do like that. Now I feel like I'm managing my time a little bit more.
Mm.
Say like it might take 1 hour, but let's have an extra hour so that if I fall behind, I still have like extra time. I can like organize like that.
Hmm.
And I think those kind of skills is something really important when you start working in the agency and companies. I mean,
For
everybody
sure.
needs that kind of skills. So
Yeah.
I recommend, yeah, Google Calendar is something good items.
I like that one, but I think that it's not about using Google Calendar specifically. It's more of like a larger message of find the tool that works for you or find the time management method that works for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely not necessarily Google Calendar. But the thing about this point is that I've honestly gone through many different tools myself. Like I tried Google Calendar. I used to initially use my just like notes, like my computer's notes.
Mhm.
And then I now kind of rely on this application or website technically called Notion, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. But
I'm
Sorry, do you know
I'm
about?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, that's probably because you're not a design student. I don't know. Like in the school of
Yeah.
design, we all technically use Notion. Like we need it, I guess. But yeah, Notion basically what it is that like it's a website that has different ways of categorizing information. So you can create a new page and make it a calendar, or you can have all your classes notes in there, or you can like I know for our school of design, we have someone that they have all the information about their dog in Notion, like when they got their vaccines or like when
Oh,
they're eating what food and all of that. So it's
oh,
just literally you can do anything that you want with Notion because it gives you like different options. But it's different thing. Like I still do use Google Calendar obviously because of all the meetings that I have to go to and that. But what really matters is initially just understanding that you have a lot of tasks and accepting that you have to write it down. What I didn't used to do before was that I just didn't want to accept that I need to write it down and I kept thinking, oh, I can just plan this in my head and I know like this day I have this assignment, I have this deadline, I have this meeting. But writing down makes a really big difference.
yeah.
And what I do now is that I kind of write down, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do for the month, usually like the bigger deadlines that I have. Then weekly, I write down, oh, these are the tasks that I'm supposed to do specifically for this day. And when the day comes, I actually open the list. Like I've dedicated task X, Y, and Z to like the Saturday, let's say. On Saturday, I wake up and I write down from this hour to this hour, I'm going to do this hour to this hour, I'm going to do that. Now, you need to understand not everybody needs to do that. Dedicating specific hours to like specific tasks, that's maybe not for everyone else, but me, I realized at one point I had too many tasks that I couldn't really do it any other way. So
Yeah.
that's what I ended up doing. But again, maybe you don't need to do that if you don't
Well,
have as many tasks.
let me tell you how I do it. And I'm not a student anymore, but I still have deadlines in
Mhm.
life. And when I was a student, this is how I would do it. Or I started realizing this is what I needed for my own brain, I guess, and my own sort of relative level of anxiety around this stuff.
Mhm.
Instead of writing just the due date, I would write start working on this paper or this assignment a week or two before the due date.
Mhm.
And now in life, with anything really, I'll often write start doing this thing or start working on this. Like I'll
Mhm.
assign a day to start doing it because I find that if I just write work on this or do this in my calendar, I look at that and I get really overwhelmed. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't, what if, oh, that means I have to finish it in that day, or like I have to like do this thing. I have to get it
Yeah.
somehow, or like do a whole bunch of work on it. But if I just write start this thing, then I'm like, oh yeah, I can start that, no problem. Like
Yeah.
just like do a little bit of it.
Mhm.
And then once I do start doing it, I usually end up getting a lot more done than I thought I was going to. So
Nice. Yeah. Now that you said that, like it actually reminded me of another thing that I do is that when you mentioned like the start and end date, another thing that I do is that like I try to kind of make sure for like school deadlines, I would say like bigger projects, not like smaller projects. I kind of try to, let's say, always that I'm gonna finish it 1 week before it's due. So like it has to be done 1 week before it's due.
yeah,
So in case, I don't know, the professor gives me like some sort of feedback or there's some sort of changes or somehow I didn't manage to finish it on time, I
yeah,
still have 1 week to finish it, which is like quite a good amount of time. And
yeah,
what it does is that, to be honest, you will be working anyway, right? Like, so
yeah,
what you do is that you're just like 1 week ahead of that working.
yeah,
Like, it's nothing that's going to be extra work for you. It's just that you're going to be 1 week ahead of
yeah,
it. And then at the end of the semester, you will probably need that 1 week because, like, at the
yeah.
end, you have more deadlines. So, what you do is just literally just 1 week ahead. That's it. No extra work.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's listen to the next clip, which is from My interview with Jackson Young, who is a dance student.
Yeah, so a lot of our grades are very are practical rather than theory based. So it very much revolves around like knowing yourself. I found that a really good way to improve my own grades is our teachers will give us corrections a lot. And it's just to take the corrections and really put them into yourself.
Mm.
Really make sure that you understand the corrections that you're given. Stuff like that is very good at like improving yourself, not only as a dancer, but as a student.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one, I would say. Well, I guess another thing is definitely making sure that you like stay physically active. Just because it's a very like it's hard to dance if you get tired, and it's hard to improve yourself if you're very tired, which is actually another good way to improve that myself and my fellow students use to improve our grades is just make sure that we take proper care of ourselves. Because
Yeah.
it's difficult to dance when you're either injured or really not feeling like dancing.
That one almost sort of leads into another question that we had asked, which might be in a future masterclass, more about like well-being and taking care of yourself. But I like what he said as well, just about taking the feedback and really thinking about that and internalizing it and using that moving forward in the next assignment or the next work that you do in the class.
Yeah. And I feel like it kind of takes us back to the previous point that we had when we were talking. Knowing yourself, also when it comes to like time management or just like recognizing how long it takes you to get things done, that's very important. And honestly, it's hard to explain. I don't know how to explain this, but for me, it took a long time to really understand what is my method of being very productive. Like I read a lot of books about productivity and all of that to see like what methods actually work for me. And I feel like a lot of students, they're not told to do that, right? So like it's hard to kind of get to that conclusion that, oh, I actually need to learn how to be productive. So what happens is that we just end up in a situation where just like we'll always stress. And my professor, I remember when she looked at me, she was like, how are you doing? And everyone was very stressed. And I was like looking at her, like chilling. She was like, why are you always calm? Why are you never stressed? And honestly, like I'm never stressed just because I know for a fact that I'm going to be able to finish what I'm supposed to finish just because my planning is very organized like at this point because I really learned how to do this. And I always say like maybe a part of it is because it's my fourth year in school because I went to another school before and I kind of have learned how to do things. But I suggest like for students, just sit down and maybe watch some YouTube videos. That's what I did. I watched a lot of YouTube videos about productivity, study tips. I read some books to learn what really works for you. And then stress really should go away, hopefully.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I was in high school, and I remember it was grade 12, it was our last year, and we were in class, and a bunch of us were nervous about university or college, and we asked our teacher that day, what's it going to be like? What advice can you give us? And he was actually a math teacher, so we thought he was going to give something about like, well, make sure you know this equation or whatever. But what he said was totally out of math teacher realm. And he said, well, honestly, going to university or going to college, what you're going to learn the most is how to learn, like how to work on assignments and how to really get that done. So it is a process of learning about yourself and what works for you and how you do that.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this actually, I feel like university or college is not, and I like a lot of people say that it's not for you to really directly learn everything from the professor. A lot of it is just you learning the basics and you have to take it from there. Like for me personally, I guess it's different depending on the program that you are. But for me, as a design student, I'm not going to just count on the projects that I did in class because a lot of those projects obviously have restrictions. There's time restrictions. Maybe you were more stressed while doing them. So I just take on projects for myself. And I've figured that now when I show my portfolio or pieces of work that I have to people, most of the ones that everyone is like, oh, this is really good, is the ones that I did on my own time, just because first of all, I was more interested in it because it was like a
Yeah.
personal project, but also I had more time to like explore it further and do more experiments and all that. So yeah, like don't really count on what is being taught in school. Go outside, go get an internship, go do some research projects, or depending on your program, whatever is it that you can do. But yeah, that's another tip that I would say I have for you.
Nice. Yeah, I agree.
So the next piece of advice comes from Jillian Butler, who is the Knowledge Transfer Coordinator from Research and Innovation Center. So let's go hear what she had to say.
Full disclosure, I love school. I would stay in school forever if I could, but I I think my first piece of advice is to be curious and to be ready to learn, because your education will really be what you make it. And the way that I always found to do that was to chase the parts of your studies that interest you, or find an avenue to interest you, find a way to relate to it personally, because I'm not unrealistic in that not everything that you necessarily have in front of you will be interesting on its face, but I've always been able to find sort of a way in to make it relate to me personally and sort of my perspective. And then beyond that, I would say that a big personal rule that's guided my professional life is I'm always looking for new ways to learn, upgrade my skill set, improve the way I tackle my work. And I will say I never like to say no with an asterisk, that this is more about exploring all of your options and being willing to say yes to new challenges rather than taking on too much work. It's more about shifting your perspective to consider things, to explore things that maybe on the surface seem a little bit too much, seem a little bit out of your depth. But it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself in. But if you're in a continual state of learning, you could do credible things and you learn a lot more about yourself and your capacity. And that's definitely what this job has been for me. So probably guiding a little bit of my perspective there.
Okay, yeah, this one I think I really like what she said at the beginning about like being curious, because I actually truly believe in that. Like I feel like you wouldn't really do anything in your whatever your field or area of expertise is unless you're actually curious about it, which again comes from this idea of being passionate about it. And that reminded me of an advice I received a couple years ago when I was in my previous university. I actually went to the career center and I was very stressed about the future because I was like, I don't know if this industry is going to be the best place for me because I feel like there aren't a lot of jobs and stuff. And she told me, look at your assignments or everything that you do throughout school and tell me what is it that you actually really love doing. And whatever that is, work hard for that and you're going to be successful. So I looked at all the assignments that I had back then, which was like in fashion school, and we had these courses that were about more like brand design or graphic design, I would say. And I was just like, honestly, those are the parts that I never get tired about. Like I can sit down and design something and stare at my computer for like 8 hours straight, and I would barely notice that time has passed.
Yeah.
And so I actually ended up doing that. Like I changed schools, I came to this whole new program that I kind of knew about before, but like that really worked out for me because I really found that thing that I was curious about and I could work towards nonstop. There was nothing that could really stop me. So be curious, try new things, and find what is it that is really working out for you. And this day and age, honestly, there are many, many different ways of doing it. Let's say you are into like carpentry. You don't have to actually go to like a workshop or a wood shop to explore that. You can start with looking at all of these videos that are online, like a day in the life of a carpenter or all of that to see like, oh, do I actually like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I really like what she said about angle things towards your interests, like things that you're actually interested in. It's like if you have to write a paper or do an assignment on a general topic, choose a topic that you actually are interested in. And you will discover more about yourself that way too. Like you'll discover what is the best thing to do on your next steps on your education path or your career path. And you might as well do what you're interested in life beyond college too, right? So
For sure. Yeah. And I would say something else to consider is, I mean, it depends on how you're looking at it. If you're actually trying to have a career out of what your interest is, I would say like also look at how feasible it is. I feel like a lot of us as students, we sometimes get really caught up in, oh, how excited we are about something, how passionate we are about it, and we kind of forget about studying enough, doing enough research about if that's actually gonna happen or not. Like I remember one of my friends once told me that they had this other person that they met, and this person was very excited about becoming a doctor. And they actually didn't do enough research because for becoming a doctor, you have to actually get a bachelor's degree and then go do some other exams to become that. This person didn't even know about these exams, and they didn't really know that they were supposed to take a couple courses in school in order to be able to eligible even for that. So
yeah.
they kind of ended up like what 3-4 years of their time thinking that they're going to become something without even doing enough research. And that didn't really end up well. So what I'm saying is that just make sure that you're doing enough research to ensure that you are paving the path for yourself right now before it's really late.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like never say never. Like I know people who've gone to university in their 50s, but still, yes, it is definitely more convenient to do it when you're younger. So
Yeah.
yeah. Follow your, I guess going back to Jillian's point, yeah, it's like follow your interests, I think is a really good piece of advice because it will help you probably get a better grade on that assignment that you're working on. Also, it could potentially help lead your path towards what you want to do with your career or further education as well. But again, like you're saying, yeah, also double check what the requirements are to follow that path as well.
For sure. Yeah.
So those are all the clips that we have from our interviews over the course of this season asking about study strategies. And I feel like, yeah, there's just so much in there, so much helpful stuff altogether.
Yeah.
Ask questions, figure out your time management approach,
Be curious.
be curious, and know yourself.
Yeah.
And take in feedback. I think that's the other piece that Jackson was saying too.
Yeah, I feel like, to be honest, being a successful student really comes down to all of these stuff that we mentioned. Yeah, of course, there are other things that you could do and that will work for you more, but I feel like if you have all of these factors in you as a student, it would be hard for me to imagine that you're not going to be a successful student. Like, it's kind of impossible. It's all very helpful. So make sure that you think about these stuff. Like, don't just listen to this episode and be like, okay, great one. I'm not going to think about it. Maybe think about these in a deeper level, do some research, as we said. Maybe that's YouTube, maybe that's just Google, whatever it is. There's so many resources nowadays. As a student, you even have free access to LinkedIn courses. So, you're not going to probably have that after you graduate. You have to pay for it. So take advantage of all of those resources that you have in college as well, or like whether that's like the LinkedIn courses, whether that's like the career coaches that we have in school, or everything else that we provide. Just take advantage of all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all out there. And yeah, maybe we'll even link to the Tutoring and Learning Center and the Career Services and the Library Learning Commons, those kinds of sources here. So amazing. I'm so glad that we got to review all of those. And hopefully these tips will be helpful for all the listeners moving forward into your semesters.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this first masterclass episode that we actually did.
Yeah.
We hope that you liked it, and hopefully there's going to be more masterclass episodes coming your way. But yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you probably next week. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.